So we are wrapping up, not the sermon, but the Sermon on the Mount. Just about done. Probably be today. And I don't know what's happening next week yet. We'll stay tuned. It's going to be one of those days where we'll just fly by the seat of our pants. Ann's favorite Sundays. I'm sure we'll get together this week and get a plan in place. We'll talk to some of the guys who are going to be here and start putting some sort of service together. And then the week after that is the discussion forum with Keith Giles, Jesus Untangled. So it might actually be that first Sunday in July before we get to 8. Yeah, no, there's not 4. There's 4 in June and then 5 Sundays in July. So the first Sunday in July, we'll probably be wrapping up the Sermon on the Mount. So half the year will be spent on the Sermon on the Mount. Here I thought maybe we might get to March on it, and it'll be July before we finish it up. But still, I've enjoyed this series. It's probably some of my favorite stuff. And when I first started the Sermon on the Mount, one of the things I pointed out, and I wanted us to be aware of as we went through it, and I kind of haven't been reminding you guys of that, but I want to point out who Jesus is addressing in the Sermon on the Mount. Who are these people that he's talking to? And so in today's vernacular, the only thing that we could have to say is that he's talking to Christians. He's not talking to unbelievers. He's not talking to Gentiles. And yeah, there were a few Gentiles scattered in, I'm sure. But basically, he was addressing the Jews who would go to the synagogue on Friday. He was talking to the rabbis. He was talking to the elders and the deacons and the board members and whatever positions we have in church today. Those are the people that he was addressing, because these are the people who think he is their Messiah. Because at first, remember, they were all like, praise, 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 and then he didn't keep feeding them every time, and then they bailed on him, and he was left with 12. He had 5,000, went down to 12 because they wanted physical food, and he's like, I already fed you guys last night, I'm not going to give you breakfast too, and then they all left, right? We all remember that story. I'm not making it up, right? It's there. It happened, right? Because sometimes I make stuff up. Ask Jessica. So when we're in the Sermon on the Mount, who is he talking to? He's talking to the people who believe that they are in. These are the people who are included. These are God's people. So today, right, that's us, right? We believe that we're the ones who are included. We're the ones who are going to heaven. We're the ones that have all the right answers. So if Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount today, he's talking to us. But what is he constantly saying in the Sermon on the Mount? Do everything the exact opposite way in which you're currently doing it. Right? He's not talking to sinners saying, hey, stop doing what you're doing and start going to church on Sunday. He's talking to the people who are already in church on Sunday, and he's saying, do everything exactly opposite of the way you're doing it right now. Okay? That is the basic premise of the Sermon on the Mount in a few sentences. Okay? So when he says, in verse 15 of chapter 7, that's where we'll be today, going to verse 23. When he says, beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothes, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not perform miracles? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So this week, because Bonnie's slacking, I had to mow the grass. And I've actually really enjoyed mowing the grass here. Not that I'm going to do it every week. Nowhere in my job description does it say pastor and lawnmower. But from time to time. And one of the reasons why, if you guys might be familiar with when Einstein, I believe Einstein was at Princeton, right? Is that where he was at? The professor was at Princeton, right? And so he was struggling, and he had this idea in his mind, but he couldn't make the math work. And so he went down and he started working in the cafeteria. And the work of being in the cafeteria, that's where he came up with the E equals MC squared. Was when he stopped trying and just went and worked in the cafeteria. Just did this menial job in the cafeteria, washing dishes, and he came with this epiphany, right? So that happens, right? So I'm mowing the grass, and I'm just on the mower, and I'm bouncing around, and I'm thinking about things, and so I started thinking about psychics, right? Because how do psychics work? Well, one of the first things they do is they find out information about you. They ask some leading questions to get information, and then they begin to prey on your emotions and tell you what you want to hear, right? So they forecast your future exactly the way you want it to be based upon your emotional response to their questions. Right? And they've been doing this for decades. So why do they do this? Because if I can prey on your emotions and continue to tell you what you want to hear, then you're going to keep coming every week and paying me money. And I thought, wow, that's a great business model. I wonder if anybody else has ever incorporated that business model. And then I started thinking about pastors. And what do pastors do? Pastors put sermons together that pry on our emotions, basically fear and joy, and they tell us what we want to hear, and we keep coming back every Sunday, paying them to prey on our emotions, telling us what we want to hear. I thought, wow, that's fascinating. The problem is that's not working anymore. People have caught on to the gimmick. They're not coming. They're not afraid of hell anymore because they don't believe in it. They're not afraid of Satan anymore because they don't believe in it. Heaven's not a good enough reward for them anymore because they don't believe in it. The tricks of this great joy of heaven or this great terrible fear of hell aren't working. What does this have to do with anything? Jesus says, beware of false prophets. You'll know them by their fruit. He doesn't say that false prophets won't bear fruit. He says that they will bear bad fruit. True prophets will bear good fruit. So then we have to begin to ask the question, what is bad fruit? Right? Because there's a whole lot of false prophets, what I would consider to be false prophets, and they have a whole lot of fruit, and people think that the fruit that they have is good fruit. Is thousands of butts in seats good fruit? Is millions of dollars in bank accounts good fruit? Is $1 million light systems and sound systems, is that good fruit? Because when we think about money, and when Jesus talks about money, he says, give it away. Ananias and Sapphira in Acts were told, sell all of your land and then give all of your money for your travels. And they said, well, we'll sell all of our land. We'll get most of the money, but we're going to keep a little bit for themselves. What happened? Anybody know what happened to Ananias and Sapphira? Dead. Boom, dead. Right? So we're not trying to be greedy. We're trying to give it away. We don't want it. Take enough for you to live on and then give it the rest away. Kind of thing that doesn't work for Ananias and Sapphira because they didn't trust that they would have enough to live on. So when we start looking at some of the churches and we say, well, yeah, but they're doing so well. The pastor just sold this many books and they're making this much money. Is that the fruit that we're after? Because once again, when we're in the Sermon on the Mount, right, we got to track the progression, right? So we finished chapter 6, don't worry about yourself and trust yourself to God. Seek first the kingdom and the goodness of God. Beginning of chapter 7, don't judge. Don't worry about your loved ones. I'm going to take care of them and trust your loved ones to me. And then we started asking, seeking, and knocking. right? We started taking the narrow way, the way that's hard pressed, the way where you're going in the opposite direction of everybody else. Then this is the transformed life. This is the point, is allowing Jesus to come into your darkness, inviting him into the deepest depths of your darkness and saying, will you shine your light in and through me? This is the transformation that comes from coming into the kingdom. This is what happens when we as the church start doing everything completely opposite of the way we're currently doing it. All the church is moving this way. We turn around and we go back this way. Our lives begin to get transformed. And for me, that's good fruit. Butts in seats of people who come to fill a seat, to put money in a plate, they have their emotions tickled and to be told what they want to hear, and then they go back out Monday and continue to live the life that they've always lived. That's not good fruit. You're not helping people transform their life. All you're doing is taking their money so you can buy a bigger house, so you can have a fancier car, so you can wear $400 alligator shoes. And all the while, you're asking your congregation of people who are lower middle class to give you $54 million so you can buy a private jet to go minister with the gospel. So you're taking money from people who don't have any money. You got people in your congregation, here it is. How many people here are on Social Security? It's a fixed income. I'm going to come up here and say, hey, can you give me $1,000? Because, I need a better car. My car's got a lot of miles on it, and I need the church to buy me a new car, because we know how well churches buying cars works out, especially for us, right? I need you to buy me a new car so I can go minister with the gospel. Right? And you're like, well, I don't really have it, but, if you're telling me, God's telling you to tell me to give you my money, then that's what I'm going to do. Right? That's not good fruit. Because what happens is now we're coming, Jesus is going, he talks a lot about fruit here, right? And he says, what's going to happen? There's all these pastors who are preaching this message. They're going to come to me one day. And I'm going to say, yeah, but you didn't do the will of my Father. You're expecting to get into my kingdom because you did all of this stuff in my name, but you didn't do the will of my Father. Yeah, but, we cast out demons in your name. We performed miracles in your name. We did all these things in your name. We raised money in your name. We took mission trips in your name. We built hospitals in your name. And we did community gardens in your name. And we did all this stuff in your name. He says, yeah, but I never knew you. I never knew you, which is the point of everything that I came to do. You did not understand your Father. So I came to show you who the Father was so you would know the Father. And if you knew the Father, you would recognize that Christ is in you, and you would let Christ know you by coming into your darkness. Because in verse 23, he says, I never knew you. That's that word in Greek. I'm not going to say it in Greek because I don't know Greek, but I know what it means in Greek. It actually became a Jewish idiom for sexual intercourse. Right? So he's not talking like I know grace. Like I know grace, but I don't know her like that. I don't know grace the same way I know my wife. So we're not talking about God doesn't know you exist. Of course he knows you exist. He's in you. But have you let him into you? Have you let him know you intimately? The most intimate possible way you can possibly be known is through sexual intercourse. And that's what this word means. This isn't just your average knowing somebody. This is being known very intimately. This is a whole nother level. Right? So, like when we talked like last week, the word life. He says the narrow way leads to life. He's not talking about just having an existence. It's a life to the fullest. It's a different word for life. It's an abundance of all that life has to offer. It's a recognition of whose you are. This knowing here, or knew, doesn't mean what we think it means. So God, you don't know me? Right? So we have to recognize what is the objective of our faith. Where am I going? Galatians. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts and letters to the Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, and Ephesians. There we go. I always forget. Galatians, Ephesians, Galatians. Galatians 4. If you guys want to go there for a minute. We'll start at verse 8. He says, however, at that time when you did not know God, you were slaves to those which by nature are no gods. But now that you've come to know God, or rather to be known by God, once again, Paul is alluding to a point in time when you weren't known by God. And you think, how can that possibly be? From the moment the universe began, God knew me. He had a plan and a purpose for me. He had called me into existence from the foundation of the world. We've read these passages over the last few weeks. But yet here it says, there was a time when he didn't know me. And Jesus said, you do all these things in my name, but I never knew you. It's a different type of knowing. 1 Corinthians 8. 1 Corinthians is before 2 Corinthians, in case you were wondering. Paul writes this, 1 Corinthians 8. Now concerning things sacrificed to idols. Well, that not really got nothing to do here, but he says, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes arrogant, but love edifies. If anyone supposes that he knows anything, he is not yet known as he ought to know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by him. So, because there's a whole mess of people out there. Now, all they want to do is tell you what they know. This is what I know. I've studied, and I've been to this school, and I've been to that seminary, and I sat under this pastor, and I listened to this guy on TV. I know. And we're so certain about our certainty when all we've ever been told is to have hope and faith, but we want to be certain in our certainty, and we want to know. And Paul says if anybody thinks they know, they don't know as they ought to know. But if anybody loves God, he is known by God. Because once again, what happens when you really love somebody, when you really, really love somebody, you let them in intimately. And you allow them to know you intimately. Okay? This is when we recognize that Christ is in us. Christ is in them. Christ is in the world. Christ is in everything from the foundation of the world universe. The mystery that had been hidden in ages past. Remember in Colossians, the history that had been hidden in ages past. The mystery that is now being given to the Gentiles is that Christ is in you, the hope of glory. Right? And once remember, in our language we say believer, unbeliever. In their language they say Jew and Gentile. So when he says, we go to the Gentiles and say Christ is in you, the hope of glory, that's because the unbelievers, Christ is already in them. They were created with Christ in them. And Paul makes this abundantly clear in Romans 1 when he says he put himself inside of you. That's why he can judge you unrighteous, because you know better, because he's in you. But just because He put himself in us. Doesn't mean that he just takes over our own free will. We still have to allow him in to the depths of our darkness. We still have to ask, Christ, are you in me? And what does he say? Come on, people. I am. Moses to God, who am I to say that you are? I am. Whom is it that you seek? Jesus the Nazarene. I am. Christ, are you in me? I am. And then we seek him, because once again, I've only been saying that for like 4 weeks now. Once again, people don't listen to sermons. You guys want sermons every Sunday, but we don't listen to them, which is phenomenal. We get far more out of this when we discuss it, but all we want you to do is preach to us, but we're not actually going to listen to what you say. Great. So then, once we get the answer to that question, we then seek him in us. This is self-discovery. It's inward work. Going into yourself, finding out who you are. Because once again, who am I and why am I here? Longing questions that all of us ask. Christ is in me. I seek him out. Where do I find Christ? But where inside? Once again, I've only talked about it 3 weeks in a row. Jesus Christ is inside of you, underneath your darkness, holding you up by the very darkness that's in you that is weighing you down. Once again, that darkness, you can call it darkness, you can call it, some people call it sin, because once again, sin isn't the action, sin is the noun. Sin is what drives your actions. Sin is the lie that you're separated from God. And so where is Jesus in you? He's holding you up by the very thing that's weighing you down, waiting for you to find him there, and then you knock. What do you knock on? Ask, seek, knock. What are we knocking on? The door to what? I already talked about this morning. I've already mentioned this morning. I've mentioned this. The door to our heart. The door to our darkness. We knock on the door to our darkness and then bring Jesus into the darkness with us so he can shine light on the darkness. I know. That's what I'm saying. But hey, make sure you preach a sermon every Sunday. Loretta, don't laugh at her. She's not funny. She's not. Don't laugh at her. She's not funny, Loretta. Don't.
She's not funny. She's accurate.
Anyway, so it's the darkness, because what does John 1:1 say? That the likeness came to shine light on the darkness, right? Jesus came to bring light into our darkness so we no longer have to live in our darkness, right? And so a lot of people ask the question, well, because a lot of the things I say, people ask the question, with what you're saying, then why did Jesus have to die, right? Because what is death? Death is dark. Death is the ultimate darkness. Jesus had to go into the ultimate darkness and overcome it. Because once again, the darkness of our hatred for him, the darkness of the death that we put on him, could not overcome his light. And 3 days after our darkness put him on the cross, 3 days after the ultimate darkness overtook his body and he cried out, "It is finished," he resurrected. And he resurrected full of light. And here we are 2,000 years later, and that light is still shining. It might be a lot dimmer because of our misunderstanding, our failure to comprehend the light because of our darkness, because the light shines in darkness didn't comprehend it. John 4, I think. John 1:4, John 1:4, 1:5, something like that. So, We get him inside of our darkness. Then he begins to heal. He begins to undo all those things that you've been told about yourself. That time that you were told that you weren't good enough. That time you were told you're not smart enough. That time that you were told that you weren't value enough not to be molested. That time that you were told that you didn't have enough value to be accepted into this group or this club. All those times when your own father rejected you and left when you were a baby and never wanted anything to do with you. All those times when you were told you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not fast enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not pretty enough, your hair isn't long enough. All those times Jesus comes in there and Jesus undoes all of it and Jesus says you are enough, you are worthy, you are deserving. And we talked about this, I don't know if this was last week or 2 weeks ago. How the music, it's just, you do deserve it. You can't earn God's love because you already have it. I can't earn something I already have. And I do deserve it. Because I'm his son. I deserve everything he wants to give to me. Because I was fearfully, wonderfully made in the image of God. If I didn't deserve it, he wouldn't have done that. If I wasn't worth it, he wouldn't have done that. So Jesus Christ is coming into our darkness to undo all those problems that we have in ourselves that say, I'm not good enough, people aren't going to like me. And Jesus says, I don't care if people like you, because I love you. And that's all that matters. And then once you begin to have that transformation take over your life, now you don't need to try to impress people anymore. You don't have to try to be the person people want you to be. Because people are going to love you anyway, because they see Christ's light shining through you because you brought it into your darkness. And then one day, you're going to stand before Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is going to say, you know what? You didn't perform many miracles in my name. You didn't perform many prophecies in my name. You didn't cast out any demons in my name, but you did the will of my Father. And you let me know you, and I know you. Come on in. Come on in. Because you bore good fruit. You raised your children to know that they were deserving and worthy of love. This guy I know online, he shared this thing that his daughter wrote. His daughter was 6 or 7, and he's an author. He's written several books, and the assignment, I think it was like I forget what it was. It had to do with Valentine's Day, but like right now, at the end of the year, like we just got a binder of Madison's work for the whole year, and that's what he had gotten. And so for Valentine's Day, they said, love is, and his daughter wrote everything. And he says, oh my gosh, my daughter has better theology than I do. My daughter said more in one word than I've been able to say in 4 books. Love is everything. God first loved us, not that we would love him, but that we would love each other. I can't love you if I don't love me. I can't love me if I'm so full of darkness and rejection that I don't like who the world has told me I am. So if I let I am in me, and I let I am into my darkness, and I let him show me who I really am, then I can begin to love me, because that's what it's all about. Because I can't love you if I don't love me. And I'm doing the will of the Father. I'm allowing him to intimately know me. I'm loving him, and I'm loving you because he loves me. And I'm going to stand before him one day, in my hope, because remember, I don't know, because I don't know anything. Don't ever ask me what I know. I don't know anything. I have a whole lot of faith and a whole lot of information. I have a lot of information. I have a lot of faith that that information is true, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going when I die. I have no idea. I don't know God is real. I have a whole lot of experiences that tell me that he is. I have a whole lot of faith that he is. I have a whole lot of faith that one day when I die, I'm going to be with him. What's that going to look like? I mean, are there literally going to be streets with gold? I don't know. I don't care. Once again, I'm not saying I don't care, okay, because I know some people get mad when I say I don't care. I do care. But I'm not worried about what heaven's going to be like, because I don't need to. I'll find out when I get there. So I want to be a good prophet. I want to bear good fruit. I don't need millions of dollars. I don't need fancy buildings. I mean, the parking lot overrun with weeds kind of bothers me. Anybody got 30 grand? Anybody? 30 grand to redo the parking lot? I mean, that'll be good fruit, I promise. Loretta, want to help me out? Come on, take like a second and third and fourth mortgage on your house and, you know, God wants you to. Dude, you put Roundup on them weeds, they laugh at you. They don't do nothing. But I want to be a shepherd that helps lead people to a transformed life. I can't transform your life. I can't save you. I can't heal you. But what I can do is help usher you along a process that will lead to a transformed life, that will lead to light coming into your darkness. I don't do anything. All I do is facilitate the Holy Spirit to work. That's all I want to do. And for me, knowing that there's 20, 30 people here, however many people here, and their lives have been truly transformed, and the light is shining in and through them, and they love me just as much as I love them, that's good fruit. And that's the prophet that I want to be. And if that happens, one day I'm going to stand before Jesus. He said, Jimmy, you know, you didn't raise millions of dollars to stop, you know, to bring water to Africa. You didn't, you know, build huge mega churches, and you didn't baptize 1 million people and by dunking them in water. You know, you didn't, you know, do all this other stuff, but you knew me. You found the narrow way that leads to life. Remember, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. And I want to be one of those few, and I want to help you be one of those few. So let's find life. And it's not, once again, this isn't just your heart beats and there's oxygen in your lungs. This is you're living to the fullness of God, of what God has in store for you. Because I want each and every one of you to come with me on that day to see Jesus. And he says, now once again, I'm not going to ask you to drink Kool-Aid or anything, but I want you guys to be there. And I want him to say, Milo, I knew you. Loretta, I knew you. Jerry, I knew you. You guys did the will of my Father. Amen.